Fathers Incorporated's Friday night empowerment conversations are about building men to become better fathers, husbands, friends, community builders, and citizens. It isn't our desire to start committees, plan marches, create organizations, or even read books. It is our desire to give men a safe place to talk about their own intimate day-to-day issues and share them with others who are facing the same problems and concerns. Our series tonight is Your Word, Your Bond, Building Men of Integrity.
This is one of those things, we started this and I had this idea, CJ and I, who actually helped me put the last one together, about putting together something to allow us to speak to men and give men a safe space to kind of talk about their issues. Give us a theme to which we would have a speaker come in each month and actually talk about something relevant, to our situation, but then also give us a space to share with each other, because we all dealing with being men. I work in this field, and just for those of you who never met me before, my organization is Fathers Incorporated. We've been doing this work since about 2003. That's when we became incorporated. Since then, we were doing direct services to fathers, helping them with their child support, their custody and visitation. And around 2 or 3 years after we started, I got hired by New York State to be the director of the New York State Fatherhood Initiative. And I did that for about 4 3/4 years. And we served about 5,500 fathers in the state of New York, provided them jobs, helped them with their child support. One of the things that I always like about that particular work, and people kind of, we talk about this child support issue, right? And so one of the things that I didn't want to do is I didn't want to move our work with this child support conversation out front. And so for us, the real conversation was jobs, because if brothers are working, they're going to pay their share. It is when they're not working that it becomes very difficult for them to pay their share, particularly when the system is driving them to do something else. And so, what we decided to do is really push the job issue. And what we found was 86% of the men who came into our programs were unemployed. 66% had an incarcerated background. 35% of them had a high school diploma, and they all had an average child support arrears of $14,000. Y'all know what that means, right? That means they owe $14,000 in debt to the government. That was the average person who was walking into our program. And 85% of them were men of color. Even though the program was statewide, 85% of them were men of color. But in the last year, I was proud to be able to say that our program only cost $2.5 million to run. That's what we were allocated to run it in the last year, $2.5 million. We collected in the last year $3.2 million in child support. And so people will say, well, Kenny, I thought you said it wasn't about child support. No, it wasn't about child support. The reason I'm able to talk about the child support issue is because, like I said to you, 86% of them walked into the door without a job. They weren't paying no child support. And so because we were able to get them working, they were able to pay child support and be able to have an adequate wage, and they paid more in child support than the actual program was paying for us to run. And so that's just in the 1 year. Even if only half of them paid child support in the next year, that number continues to accumulate. They continue to work, they continue to have experience, and they're more than likely to continue to be active in their children's lives. And we also know that when they're working, they're relevant, they're able to protect and provide. The relationship with the mother is better, so that the access and visitation becomes better. And so that's kind of what we started out in that work, and then we kind of made a hard shift. Because one of the things that we were clear about in doing this work is that everybody wasn't happy that we were working with fathers. Everybody wasn't happy that we were working with men. In fact, wanted to know, why are you working with them? Shouldn't we be spending this money in single mothers and getting them to a place where they can have more resources to pay for their children? And so part of what we used to run up into wasn't the fact that we didn't have the resources to serve these fathers. It was that there was a societal norm of what people believe fathers were that always served as a barrier to actually get some work done. And so I'll give you a quick for instance. One of the things I did at New York State is we trained all of the judge magistrates in New York State. I trained every last one of them in working with fathers. And I would be in a room And we did 3 regional ones, and it would be, it would be 100 judges, magistrates in this room. And this was like, I'm talking now 6-7 years ago. But at any given moment, I can look across the faces of those judges, and I can see like 1/3 of them that agree that, yeah, fathers, we need to pay more attention to fathers. We need to be a little more lenient with fathers. 1/3 of them were like, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm listening to you. I'm hearing you. I'm ready to get some new information. I might be even willing to kind of shift a little bit. Then there was 1/3 of them that was like, if I could shoot you dead right now, I would. Because my belief is that dads are dead beats. They ain't never going to change, and I'm never going to change my philosophy and culture about how I deal with fathers. But that gives you a sense as to why child support orders, particularly custody and visitation, is so crazy across the board. Because you can go in with the same situation, same issue, same job situation, same everything. The only difference between the two of you is the judge that you see. He can walk out with 50% custody, a low child support order that matches his income, and you can walk out with absolutely nothing and a child support that's over your ability to be able to pay. Not because you're equal in what you walked in with, it's because you both ran into 2 different kind of judges. And so a lot of guys are not clear, why they're running into the different issues. Why you talk to another brother and you're saying, yo, I got the same thing you got, but I got a different outcome. It's not because yours is any different from his. It's just you ran into a different judge that had a different idea than the one that he ran into. Now, the good thing is they're starting to shift a little bit. So they're becoming more of them that are beginning to understand the value, because now we have programs that's making it clear that if you provide brothers, and I keep saying brothers, and you are my brothers, but it's just something that comes out of my mouth easy, that when you're talking about fathers, when you provide them the means, that they do what they're supposed to do, right? And so part of that then lends to this, because I speak to men around the country, in fact around the world, about their issues, and we all kind of deal and suffer, with the same kinds of conversations. My baby mama, my job, my boss, my girlfriend, my this, my money, my job, my car, my whatever. And a lot of times, those are issues that really serve as barriers to really do what it is you're trying to do. And oftentimes, if you just have somebody to talk you through it, you might end up with a different outcome than when we do what we're used to doing, and that is to respond the way our instincts tell us to respond. DV is a perfect example. There's a story, and this is going to wind us right into our speaker and our subject for tonight. There's a story, I don't know how many of you seen it. There was a guy, I think he was in Troy, but over the last couple of days, he bit some woman's finger off. I don't know if you've seen it it was on YNN this morning, but it happened to be one of my daughter's friend's teacher brother, too. He had some incident happened on a bar on Pearl Street somewhere, and he bit some girl's finger off. I mean, he bit it off. And so my daughter was kind of like saying, I said, how'd you find out about that? And she said, on Instagram. And I said, what do they talk about on Instagram? She goes, all my friends are like saying, free my teacher. So she was laughing, and her friends were like laughing at what was taking place with respect to this guy. But she said a couple of other things that kind of struck me when she was kind of just talking to, and my daughter has an open space and where she feels comfortable in talking to me about anything, but she doesn't know sometimes when she's talking to me and having fun and in the mix of her own story that she's actually telling me something else that she doesn't even know she's telling me. And I said, wow. I was like, how you know? I said, what are your friends talking about? And she goes, we know all of our teacher stuff. We watch them on Facebook, we watch them on Twitter, our friends, and my daughter doesn't have it. So what it means is that her friends with Facebook and her friends with Twitter and her friends with Instagram get together and huddle up and talk about what they see on those platforms that their teachers and their parents and their family members are doing. So when we think they're not paying attention, they're paying close attention. So when you get into an atmosphere in a school situation and you're a teacher who's trying to discipline a 13 or 14-year-old and you're trying to tell them to do something when their friends had just come out of the bathroom, seeing you in a bar the night before with your dress above your head, it's very hard to get them to listen with integrity to who you are. And so, I heard that today when she said that. And so this issue of integrity and rolling into what's your second face? how are you functioning with your second face? What is your second face telling you about that? Oftentimes when you hear people talk about relationships, they say that the person who walks into the relationship is just an emissary of the person who you really are. You just coming in to broker the deal. The first person is walking in to broker the deal. When the deal is brokered, then the real person comes in. That's why women don't know when they're dealing with a person who's got history of DV, because the person who has history with DV didn't walk in and create the relationship. The person who knew how to walk into the relationship is the one who walked in. And she had no clue that this guy was something else because he was really good at the second face. And the question with this issue of integrity is supposed to put you in a place where the second face doesn't exist. You shouldn't have to rely on a second face for people to really know who you are. You've heard the term two-faced, double-tongued, side-twisted. All of those kinds of things deal with this issue of integrity. And so we thought tonight that we really wanted to kind of have this conversation about integrity. And we heard it. I heard it growing up in New York City and Brooklyn. We throw it around. I don't hear it as much anymore. I hear the old cats probably say it more than anybody else. Your word is bond. And they throw that out there because it tends to be an easy thing to throw out. But do we take time to really understand and want to know what that really means? Word is bond. And so the question is your word bond? And it's one of the things that I struggle with here in the capital region, and I get past it because I know that there are brothers of integrity who tell me when they come in, they come in, right? When they're going to do something, they're going to do something. I've known Ron for many, many years. When I did radio on CDB and 88 and Fly and just about every radio station in this area, I've done at some point, and we've kind of had parallel careers together, although it was never really tight and close. We've always had a bond where our work was such that we always did it with a level of integrity, because it was, for us, it was sowing seed back into our community. And it was interesting because on my way over here, I just quickly, thought to myself that I've been sowing into this community for 23 years, right? And I don't know why I thought about that, but my anticipation and my wife's anticipation is to be out of here by the end of this year. And so I'm settled because I put 23 years in this place. And I put a lot of work, and Ron put a lot of work. Others in this room, we put a lot of work. We still sowing into this community. And what I'm gonna say to you is don't give up. Keep sowing, because you never know when the harvest is going to come. And so I want to introduce Ron Williams. Many of you know him when he was the program director at JAMS. He's now doing some other work in New York State that he'll tell you about. And I couldn't think of a better person here in the capital region to stand in front of you guys and talk about this issue of integrity. And as soon as he's done, we're just going to open up for about 20 to 25 minutes, talk about this issue of integrity, and then we're going to open it up, and whatever's on your heart, we're just going to flow with it. Good?
Cool. Yep.
All right. Let's give Ron a round of applause.
First, I want to thank Ali and his wife for allowing us to use the book club. This is a beautiful facility, a wonderful place. I hope you guys, after and beyond this, continue to come through and support the brother in their efforts. Like Kenny said, he and I have known each other for, probably umpteen years is the term I'll use at this point. And, the organization that I'm involved with Kenny, Fathers Incorporated, we've been doing a lot of work in the community around fathers. And the last time we did the event here, when CJ had the event, me and Kenny kind of just started talking, and he's like, Bear, I really want you at some point to do one of these presentations. And I'm like, all right. I said, well, what we're going to talk about? And we kind of just started chopping some things up, and this whole integrity thing came up. And, it's really interesting because when we talk about integrity, it's like, what does that really mean? And that term, word is bond. Like, I remember being a kid, and with the 5% Nation of Islam, that was one of the big things they always use. Word is bond, son. Yo, word is bond. And what I always understood that to be, and what I learned it to be, was that, and it's really like this, Your word is your bond. Your bond is your life. If your word should fail, then your life should fail. Now that's pretty deep. So basically, if I give you my word, that means something. I'm putting everything on it. And if I don't meet that, then I give up my life. How many of us in this room really live like that and are willing to live like that? Now, we say it because that's the one face, and there's times that we do it. But the other face is when we're like, you know, wow, yo, son, check this out. I got that new bootleg movie. Ooh, that's one of those second faces. Because the bootleg movie isn't a man of integrity, because that's not really honest. So we do it, not really thinking about it. And so these are some of the things as we talk about standing on our square and really being in that space of trying to present to the children that we work with, or our spouses, or our own kids, or whatever things we're doing in life, being able to show them that true face. And that's hard work. Tonight, I'm going to talk about some things that's going to get right here in the gut, you know, because it gets in my gut at times when I think about it, you know, and the idea is not to make anybody feel bad. The idea is for us to help each other build and grow, because that's what men of character do. As we develop our character and we look at these things that go on in our lives, we want to be able to present a good face and be able to do things in a way where it makes sense to those around us as we talk about building a community and all those things. So we've decided that we're going to be doing these empowerment series, and integrity is the first piece of the foundation as to what we want to do in building up some of this character. Now, I'm going to just read you what one of the definitions of integrity. It's an adherence to moral and ethical principles, soundness of moral character, and honesty. So when we look at those principles, we're talking about being trustworthy, showing examples of the right things to do with ourselves, leading by example. I like to use the term doing the right thing when nobody's looking. That's really what builds character. Being able to know that even though your boss comes to work at 9:30, you're supposed to be there at 9 o'clock, that you're there at 9 o'clock. Because even though you realize that, yeah, I got like a 3-minute window, a 5-minute window, maybe even a 25-minute window before anybody realizes, those are the kinds of things that we kind of do, and we're doing real casually. And again, it's not about making people feel bad, because those are the things that we kind of walk the line on. It's like, well, you know, does that really matter? Well, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it does, because the more we move in that lane, the less we move in the lane of what I like to call righteous, you know, in terms of really being able to keep ourselves centered. Because the more we allow that immorality to seep into our system, then the more of ourselves we give up of the better of ourselves. Because I'm a firm believer that we're required to live in excellence. So that means sometimes doing some real weird stuff. And I'm going to share an example for me a few weeks ago at my job. Now, my main job now outside of radio is I work for the Office of Children and Family Services at Columbia Girls Center, which is down in Claverack, New York, right outside of Hudson. And I'm going to share a real story. I'm in the facility one day. I'm what's known as like an administrator on duty, so I kind of run the facility. There's a couple of brothers here that are aware that work with me in the agency. During the day, a kid needs to go back to the living unit. I take her back to the living unit. I get distracted doing something else. Somebody needed my attention for something. I walk off the unit and leave the kid on the unit. Now, that's a real serious situation. There were other people that were in an office that were still there with the kid, so she technically wasn't alone, but that's a serious violation. So I'm standing there, and of course the first thing is, well, one of the staff comes to me later, and about 3 or 4 minutes later, and it's like, yo, Mr. Williams, you left so-and-so in the unit. You know, I took her to class. So in my brain, I'm like, all right, that situation's over. But then I'm like, nah, that really ain't over. I got a couple of choices to make. I could either play it off like it never happened and don't say nothing, or I could go directly to my boss and put them up on what's going on, or I could collude with this staff and say, yo, you know what, just kind of like keep that to yourself. And now we got some kind of little thing going on where if I need to be able to confront this person later, now I'm in a sticky situation. If I got to deal with something later. So what I chose was, I'm going to just say it like this. I told on myself. I went directly to the people that I needed to tell. And it became, well, you know that we're going to have to write you up for that, right? I'm like, yeah, I realize that. You know, and I'm going to have to take it for what it is. Which, later on, a couple of days afterwards, the girl told anyway. She's in the director's office, and she's like, well, you know what happened the other day? You know, Mr. Williams left me on the unit, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, I know. And the girl's like, well, how'd you find out? Who told you? Mr. Williams told me himself. What do you think that did for that kid? Like, wow. Now, I share that story because for me, that was one of those moments. Like, me and Kenny been talking about this for a minute, but that was one of those moments that was really, it could have went, I could have decided, you know what, I ain't saying a word. And it may have been found out, and they may have never said anything to me. But then my credibility is always in question. Because everybody's not going to always confront you when you do something that's a little sideways. They just hold on to it. So now in the future, as you're saying stuff to them, they're kind of like, no, that don't even sound right. See, now, and again, I don't do it to have money in the bank, but to keep it real, that's money in the bank. Because now if something pops off, they're like, yo, that don't even sound like him, because that's the brother that told on himself. Because that's what it is. I fell on the sword. But it was because it was my mistake. And as men, and as men of character and integrity, that's what you do. You stand up, you take responsibility for your mistakes. It was a mistake. You know, we're not above making mistakes. We're not perfect. So when things like that happen, it feels weird. Because the world we live in tells us it's okay to lie. You're supposed to lie. You don't ever, tell on yourself. That's not something that you do. You don't want to do that. That's the world we live in. The world we live in says, nah, don't, come on. Because it's almost like they, when we was kids, they used to have like the devil on one shoulder in the cartoon and the angel on the other shoulder. We go through that daily with every decision that we make. If it's a decision you got to make with your wife, she call you and say, yeah, honey, on your way home, can you stop and buy milk? You could either say, yeah, but I ain't got no money. Knowing you got money, but it's like, but it's those simple things like that. And that's what integrity is based on. When we're talking about respect, we treat others the way we want to be treated. And I'm going to put it on blast. I got a lot of cats. Yeah, Bear, I'm coming to see you. Yeah, Ron, I'm going to be there. Now, in the back of my head, I'm like, this cat is full of, but I get it. Because we've been taught and we've been conditioned to think that people are tender. That people, I call them weak. It's like, look, I'm a grown man. Be upfront with me. Tell me like, yo, I got something else going on. I'm not interested. Whatever it is, I'm not fragile. I'm not going to break. We have to be able to understand and respect people's feelings. And yeah, I get it that we want to be sensitive to feelings. But yo, if I'm a man and I'm trying to be a man, I need to give it to you real, and I need to be able to accept it real. And stop being so sensitive. Because in my opinion, nowadays, we're raising a lot of sensitive men. And a lot of it is a condition that Kenny's talking about when we got single mothers. Now, I'm not knocking single moms at all. I'm not knocking women at all, because there's a lot of strong women out there. But you can't raise a man And so we got a lot of these guys that are making some weird, I'm going to call them just like punk decisions. They think like punks. They act like punks. You know, if we start looking at the media portrayal of us as black men, even white men, I mean, they got this show on TV now, something, what is it called, A New Normal? I happened to just flip through one night, you know, and I know on online now, when the brother puts this up, people are going to call me a homophobe. I really don't care. I'm not a homophobe, but I stand on my square that it's about a man and a woman. They got these guys kissing on television. What kind of portrayal is this for our kids? You know, what kind of man is that? You know, where they do that at? Now, if we go and we start digging in, I'm not trying to get religious, but we dig into any of the books, where's that? Where's that written? Where do we see that? So when we start talking about compromising and all of that and allowing this immorality into our thought process, what are we really doing to ourselves? What are we passing on? What's the legacy of that? What are we really trying to accomplish through that? What does that look like? What's the outcome? You know, and so in 2013, it's sissified. We got a lot of these things going on that's just really wild and crazy. You know, as we talk about, you know, being fair and playing by rules. You know, whatever the rules are, we play by them. We understand that all the rules don't necessarily work to our benefit, but we still play by the rules. Part of integrity is playing by the rules. We just begin to learn how to use the rules to our advantage within the guidelines of the rules. We figure out ways, and that's what men of integrity have to do. You know, we don't take advantage of others to win the rules, but we figure it out. We have to play by the system. We're required in the United States of America to live by the laws of the United States of America. We're not going to rebel against the government. We live within the parameters of the government. We may not agree with the government, but we use our power to vote as our way of getting ahead in the system. But we have to do that. We have to lead the charge on that, and that's what men of integrity do. You know, we begin to take a hold of our community. We show and we lead by example. We stand up and be the men that we're designed to be. You know, and that's not easy. Because again, if we're talking about that we can't trust the brother next to us because last week he said, yeah, son, we're going to get together and we're going to do X, Y, and Z, but they ain't even call. It's like, how many times has that happened to you? Like, I feel Kenny when he was talking about that, like, people tell you something. And my thing is like, in 2013, yo, we got cell phones, we got email, we got Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I couldn't get something. Now I'm feeling, and again, if you're talking about feelings, like if you somebody that's easily offended, yo, you should be feeling really horrible when somebody does that to you. But see, one of the things I learned years ago from a brother named T.D. Jakes, and he said it in one of his sermons, God doesn't want us to be easily offended. So when people do stuff for me, I just kind of brush it off. Not that I don't process it, but I just brush it off because I can't allow that to get absorbed into my system. Because people will always disappoint you because they don't have the same level of integrity. And it's not being better than somebody. It's not about them being weaker than you. It's about really where they are. So we have to lead by an example. So when brothers like Kenny or Daryl or even Ed, they come to me, they ask me questions, I hope that they believe the response that I give them is real. You know, for me, that's important. I want people to understand, like, yo, when you ask Bear something, he gonna give it to you raw. You might not like it, but he definitely gonna be honest. You know, because that's important, because I know that's how I want it from people. You know, and it's really interesting because when you have that kind of strength, there are people that are drawn to it in a positive way, but there's also people drawn to it in a negative way. You have some people that are drawn to it and then get very intimidated by it because then they feel like you don't have any respect for their feelings, like you're insensitive, because that power for them is something that they know they're drawn to, but they don't know how to deal with it and handle it. Then you have other people that can handle it. You have other people that, you know, steel sharpens steel. So you get around those people and it really helps you grow and build. You know, and that's what we're doing here. You know, we want to be able to bring brothers together, you know, of like mind and sharpen each other. Learn from each other, grow with each other, because there's a world out there that needs us. You know, it really needs us. When we talk about like looking out the window, because I remember the last time brothers were talking about looking outside and what do they see and all those kinds of things. And some people talk about seeing cars and houses and all that kind of stuff. But then, you know, Brother Kenny was talking about how he sees the pain of the world out there and how he sees, you know, all the things that's going, you know, downhill for us out there. So again, it's about perspective, but we want to be able to share perspectives. You know, so as we do these empowerment, you know, meetings on Fridays, every other month, that's the idea and that's the intent. Bring brothers together, have something to talk about. I mean, look, we got a room right now that, in my opinion, you know, we could pack it and ram it. And it should be. If we was in here with the strippers, I guarantee you we have everybody here. And that's okay, though, because that's that world, and that's what they do. But we're going to have this world, too. And that's the two faces. It's really weird. Because, you know, being able to move in both those worlds, how do you reconcile that, though? You know, because we've all done that and been there, and we've done things that's like, you like feel it, and you're like, and you think about it like, but it is what it is. That's real talk. It's like, we're not going to sugarcoat this. You know, and part of this is just to be able to open the dialogue. And how does that work? Like, you know, how do we begin to work through that and filter some of this stuff out? Because again, a lot of this is a cleansing. Because we've learned things in a certain way and we've been conditioned in a certain way, and the people that you hang around have an influence on you. Kenny and I had the opportunity to go to All-Star Weekend a couple of weeks ago. And for me, the interesting thing about it, having been in the music business, when I go out of town like that, I was always with dudes that was reckless. Smoke weed, drink alcohol, womenizers, married, got side chicks, the whole 9 yards. And so being around that, you know, we're in the club popping bottles. This time I was with grounded brothers, that I'm gonna call them. Married, responsible. So we're there and we're working, and I'm like, and I'm really in my mind, I'm like, yo, this is different. But I enjoyed it. It was really an opportunity for me to enjoy myself in a different way. You know, it's the first time I had been on a trip like that with brothers that, yeah, we would laugh at the things that we saw. We would observe it. We would process it, but it was a totally different processing. You know, I'm going to say this because, again, people going to watch and they're going to bug out. Even my wife, because she'll probably look at this now. It's going to be online. I'm sitting in the lobby on the Saturday morning that we're there, minding my business. This is early. This sister walks up on me. She's like, hey, handsome, who left you out here by yourself? And I'm just looking at her like, okay. How are you? And she's like, I'm fine. I said, she goes to me, she's like, so what are you doing? I said, look, I'm getting ready to have some breakfast with some of my friends. What are you doing? She's like, I really don't have anything going on. I said, so you came to Houston without a plan? Who comes to Houston without a plan? So then she walks off with some of her friends, and, you know, then she comes back and says something else to me, and and she goes on about this, I go on about mine. But it's really interesting how this stuff works, because, you know, Kenny mentioned earlier about this whole Houston thing when we went to some of the brothers, you know, while we were talking ahead of time. And, like, you go to this place, and it's just really different. It's like two different worlds. You know, we're out there, we're doing fatherhood stuff, we're involved, we're going, you know, we did a gospel concert, we're at Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church, and we go back to the hotel, and it's all about the red Solo cup, and the chick got the booty out here, and her dress is half off, and cats is like trying to get at her, and they drunk and crazy, and there's blunts, and it's a dichotomy of life, though. You know, these are the things that we have to deal with daily as men, and how do we reconcile that? You know, how do you reconcile that yourself? Those are questions that at night, you know, I think about at times like, wow, you know, today was this kind of day. How did I do in it? You know, what could I have done differently? Are there things that I may have been able to do to help somebody else through something? Was I a good example? You know, am I somebody that can wake up in the morning and look at myself? And that's really what I move on, because my son, you know, Jaleel is right here. Jay Will from, you know, Jams. I mean, that's my, you know, that's my heart right there. And so when he was growing up with my daughters, I always had to be able to go home and look in the mirror and say, did I do the best I could? Because I know that they watching me. Like everything I do, they watch. Even till this day, they watch. So I have to be able to live it and do it. I can't like half it. It can't be halfway. It's either I'm all in or I'm not in at all. And that's hard to do. But those of you in the room that's fathers, you can appreciate that and you can understand that. Because when you got your seeds looking at you, it's like, ooh. You know, and if you standing there like, and I don't want to get off on tangents, but I'm going to use something that always, because right now I'm just letting the spirit move me. Like, I talk about this all the time. We got our kids, right? Now, this is an integrity thing because we're talking honesty. So I'm going to use it from that perspective. And I realize that traditions of America and where we live in, people do things because that's what Americans do. And that's the tradition of America, or the tradition of Christianity, or the tradition of Islam, or the tradition of Judaism, or all of these kinds of things. With some of those come some of these what we call holidays. When my son and daughters were born, we never did Christmas, we never did Easter Bunny, we never did Tooth Fairy, we never did any of that because my wife and I early on realized that how can we tell them this the first 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years of their life and then say, yo, you know what? Just playing. Oh, you know, that's what we do. Just, you know, oh, psych. Nope, that ain't real. And then have them believe us. See, I'm a firm believer that, and I'll call it for what it is. It ain't a miscommunication. It ain't a slip of the tongue. It's a lie. Because there's going to always be that question in the back of their mind. And I'm not knocking what people do, but it's just something to think about. So as we raised them, there was never a question, I hope, in their mind, like, yo, I know they telling me the truth, because we don't even do that. I ain't even have to worry about that. That was no Tooth Fairy ever came to my house. But what we taught them, though, too, was never go and disappoint their friends and crash their world. So when their friends talked about it, they just sat there quietly. They didn't go into like, oh, they lying. Nope. We taught them the respect piece. Because you got to respect other people and their opinions. But we chose that because, again, with that honesty piece. So when you talk about integrity, you got to look at the whole picture. It's just not just picking and choosing what you want to have that integrity in. It's about the whole. And that's what we work towards, though. See, because there's no finality to it. You know, we working towards perfection. That's what God requires of us, that we work toward it. You know, so that walk's got to always be there, and it's not an excuse to be able to say, you know what, I ain't got to do that today. No, we still trying to strive, and yeah, do we slip? Of course we slip. But those slips have to become less and less as time goes on. That's what's really the key to it, is being able to keep yourself grounded, move through life in a way that moves you towards that perfection, accept responsibility for your mistakes, and continue on that progress and that journey called life. And being able to do it in a way that people can look at you and say, yeah, that brother right there, that's a man. Because that's really what it is. We're defining a man right now. You know, we could use all these fancy terms, trustworthy and honest and responsible and, you know, integrity filled or whatever else. But at the end of the day, it's a man. And we're trying to promote responsible manhood, you know, responsible fatherhood, you know, responsibility for our actions and the things that we do. Brothers, I'm going to leave it on that note. You know, I definitely appreciate the time. And that free will is something that is really a wonderful thing. You know, that ability to really make that choice and to choose. The difficulty and challenge for some people, though, is how they deal with the outcome. Because do we take responsibility for the outcome, or do we try to blame others if it's an outcome that we didn't expect? Because that's really what it is. It's really like we have that ability to make a choice. If you make a choice that's not in your best interest, are you willing to take responsibility for it? Are you ready to man up? That's really it. That's what it comes down to, you know. And that's kind of simple and plain. And I try to look at things simple and plain. It's when I make this choice, am I willing to go hard on it, you know, and deal with whatever comes with it.
What do you guys do when you're trying to live in a space of integrity, but you're dealing with somebody with no integrity?
Well, I'm having an aha